All right, guys, so we don't have a show today. There's no game because it is Labor Day, but I did still get into the office today and work. And more importantly, I was excited enough about Saturday and what we saw from beginning to end. I'm talking hours before kickoff up until hours after kickoff. I'm so excited about what I saw that I wanted to come in and give you guys some of my thoughts here because I feel like it's important. I feel like this is an important time. And I think some things were really proved on Saturday. What you saw on Saturday was really for a day. I understand it was just a day. I understand it's just a win over Nichols, an FCS team, and all of that. But what you saw was the utopia that people of my generation, maybe within the standard deviation of 5 to 10 years on either side, have been wanting for K-State football for a long, long time. I compared it on Twitter to Rumspringa, which is like, I probably don't understand it to the extent that I should, but there's the movie Rumspringa where it's the Amish community. They send the kids, once they, hit 18, something like that, they go out, they leave the community, they experience all of the things that they have not been experiencing while they've been back home, living a normal life and hanging out and doing whatever. I mean, in the movie, it's drinking and partying and all that stuff, but that really is what it was like. Because let's be honest, K-State football has been in basically the Amish sort of society of college football for a while. And I am being dead serious when I say that what I experienced Saturday was the most fun that I have had watching/covering K-State football in years. That is not hyperbole at all. Somebody did come at me on Twitter and accuse me of being hyperbolic to try to sell the narrative. You can think what you want to think. I'm being dead serious. That was the most fun I've had since 2012. And even then, I mean, there are some subtle differences to how all this is a K-State football that I feel much more ownership in right now because it does, the way things are being done now, feel like the way that they should be to me in 2019 and to those that are of like mind with me. I mean, agree or disagree with me on all this stuff, but let's go down the checklist of why this, to me, was the most fun experience that I'd had with K-State football in years. K-State played very well. I mean, that's just a piece of this, but we'll start there. And there's going to be plenty of time this week for the conversation of what it actually means and do you change expectations for the season. I'm going to try really hard not to overreact too much in terms of like a wins and losses sort of thing this year because of what happened on Saturday, but you can't deny, I mean, K-State played about as well as you could have possibly hoped. That exceeded my wildest imaginations of how well they would play and how good they would look. The stadium was hyped, man. That was as into a game as it feels like the stadium has been in a little while. In particular, the students. And it shouldn't be a coincidence that that's the game that and the environment that gets the students involved in it because it's the same stuff that appeals to the player sensibilities that appeal to the student sensibilities who have more ownership in making that place loud than any other specific group. So beyond that, we found out the coaching staff does stick to its word in that they're going to get athletes out on the field and they want to play a lot of players. How many of these guys that were out there on the field are either players specifically that we have been clamoring for to get more playing time under Bill Snyder or the archetype of those same players? So like Sebastian Taylor had the big spring game 3 years ago, whenever that was, and just hardly ever played. Bill Snyder immediately poo-pooed what he did in the spring game and the post-game press conference. Well, Sebastian Taylor got out there, and he was tied for third among wide receivers in snaps with 17, and credit K-State Online and Derek Young for tabulating all of that. Josh Youngblood was right there, too, with the same amount of snaps as a true freshman, the speedy incoming freshman that brings athleticism that the rest of the team doesn't really have. Daniel Green played a lot at linebacker. That's another player that we have been wondering, like, when is this guy going to see the field? Daniel Green got out there and played. And then Jonathan Alexander. He is like the archetype for the incoming junior college recruit that brings the speed and athleticism that K-State doesn't have, but just has to fight to get on the field by the time his career at K-State is even up. Reminds me a lot of like DeCorey Johnson. DeCorey Johnson goes out there, they finally play him against Auburn. He's Defensive Player of the Week in the Big 12, and then it's still tough for him to get on the field in front of Will Davis. The days of those kind of games and that stuff seem to be gone. And what did Jonathan Alexander do? He got out there and he made the most impressive play of the game with a strip, scoop, and score. And above all else, we had the quarterback who was by far the best quarterback on the roster last year and has been fully embraced and has all this confidence, we had him go out there and prove that all that stuff does mean something. And now that he is embraced, I'm not going to lie. I had the Twitter fingers about Skylar Thompson, the way that he played now that he's being embraced by this coaching staff. He was phenomenal. His Pro Football Focus grade on a scale of 100 was a 95. I think it was like a 94.6. Okay, that's pretty damn good. He was 16 of 22 and had 4 drops. Would have had way past the 212 yards that he had it not been for some of those drops, and also would have had far more than 1 touchdown pass. Skylar Thompson looked poised as hell. Like, that guy looked exactly like how Chris Kleiman described him after the game.
He's a stud. He's a winner. I was so pleased with how he commanded the offense, how poised he was. You know, he'd get flushed out of the pocket and throw strikes. Didn't get frustrated when we had a couple balls I think maybe could have been caught. And I'm telling you, that kid's got that it factor.
And that's another thing. Not only did Skylar go play as well as we've seen a K-State quarterback play in a while, but after the game, Chris Kleiman wasn't trying to play any mind games at the post-game press conference. I mean, look, I'm not going to belabor that point, but it's just refreshing to be able to see the guy that clearly looks like the best player out there go play well and then have it backed up in the post-game press conference by the coach. Like, I mean, that to me was incredibly refreshing and a big part of the day. And I will be honest with you and tell you that during the game, I mean, I was having to fight. You may think by my Twitter feed I wasn't trying to curb any of this at all. I was trying to put a governor on just the feelings of, like, vengeance, the feelings of just ultimate, I mean, just all the bad emotions about, like, damn it, I was right this whole time. Look at all of you people. I want to rub it in your faces. I had that. I had it all over the place in spades about the quarterback as it relates to Bill Snyder, as it relates to any fans that disagreed last year about Skylar Thompson. All of that. I had it all. And I'm trying not to have that be the overarching theme and message of what I'm about to say here, because it all plays into each other. Like, what happened was on Saturday, the utopia that I had been envisioning for K-State football for a long time was there and existed. And guess what? The wheels didn't fall off the actual football part either. I mean, I think a lot of fans that have been somewhat resistant to change would have thought, okay, well, if you start letting the players picking the music and we have to sit through Millie Rock and Meek Mill and all of that, and you just throw the athletes out there and don't worry about the guys, and, you know, it's not Bill Snyder that's leading the pro, like that this is going to be an undisciplined team and we're going back to Ron Prince and all of that. What happened on the field? That was the most disciplined game that I've seen K-State play in at least like 2 years. I mean, they were not hardly at all penalized, and they had one bad timeout early in the game and then nothing beyond that. It looked so much more organized, crisp, fun, all of that stuff. It didn't fall off, guys. Like, I know that sometimes it's easy, and I understand I can be up here and sounding very self-righteous, and I'm sure it drives those of you crazy that are of a different generation and disagree with me and have different sensibilities and all of that stuff. And sometimes we probably take it too far, and that creates tension and that creates disagreement. But I think what Saturday proved is no matter what happens the rest of the year with the actual football, it proved that what we have been saying, those of my generation have been saying, that, hey, we just want a modernized football program. We want a football program that's being done the way that it's being done 99% of other places, and that still can happen. It doesn't mean that you have to just fly off into the deep end and be some crazy program that's all style, no substance. You can still strike a balance, and I think Chris Kleiman's a very good balance of style and substance. And guess what? I heard Dreams and Nightmares, one of the best hype songs of all time, by Meek Mill playing, and watched the players just go nuts for it in the end zone, and they still went out and played really well. And there wasn't anything embarrassing that happened. It didn't turn into Miami of the 80s and 90s, where guys are just going around getting tons of 15-yard penalties for celebrations and stuff like that. There was none of that. What it proved is that you can have what, honestly, the younger generation has wanted. Okay? Sometimes I may sound like I just want a team full of Daniel Sams out there that are running and acting a fool, and I love the old Miami teams of the 80s and 90s. This definitely wasn't that, but it's still more than enough for me, and I enjoyed the hell out of it. K-State had the fun pregame intro. They had the music that they wanted. They had a hammer with dog mentality written on it on the sidelines as their de facto turnover chain. All of that stuff, by the way, not like it's crazy in college football terms. I felt like most college football fans or people that follow me on Twitter that aren't K-State fans were probably looking at my feed and being like, why are these guys making such a big deal out of just the music and the fun the players are having on the sideline and the atmosphere and all of that stuff? It's because we haven't had it. Man, I've gone through years of covering this team and being around this team, and something that I really loved just had the fun gradually sucked out of it. All they did was just bring it up to speed. I mean, guys, that was what happened on Saturday was driving like a 2017 Camry. I mean, it's not totally nice and new, and it's still just a, fairly mid-range kind of sedan, something that's not going to break down. But, what it wasn't was a horse and buggy, okay? I mean, it's not like it was some Corvette or some Lambo or something like that. I'm terrible with cars, so I'm sorry, gearheads, if I'm messing anything up. But it wasn't taking one of those for a spin. You're driving a Camry out there, okay? And I know that that's a big change from a horse and buggy, but that still is not, relative to the rest of the college football world, anything crazy. And what I'm seeing is that K-State can join the rest of the modern world and give the younger demographic of the fan base a lot of the things that they want, and give the players a lot of the things that they want, and still have the tenets of being a successful football program. I get that change is hard. Change is hard, and even talking to some people like my boss, my father, who are obviously of a different generation than me that were at the game there Saturday, telling me about, there's a lot of people here in the stands that are kind of looking around and not knowing what to do, that they're listening to A$AP Ferg instead of Van Halen, and it's like, what are we doing? I know that's not easy change for you. I get it, okay? But guess what? I've had similar feelings sitting there and listening to the 80s rock concerts that I've been listening to for 29 years at K-State football games. Wasn't my favorite thing in the world. But you know what? When the team was winning, when it was 2012, like, fine, play Right Now by Van Halen, and I'll deal with it because they're going to win. I mean, if the product on the field is going to look like what it did on Saturday, I think you guys can start to learn and embrace the Millie Rock. I mean, Fargo, North Dakota embraced it. Like, that's the crazy... Chris Kleiman universally loved in Fargo, North Dakota. Fargo is not at the top of my list when I think of like progressive, crazy places. But they were fine with the music, and they were fine with the cool intros and all of that, because they understood it was a part of the process, and they just, hey, that's how life goes in 2019. And welcome to it, because that is now where K-State football is. So if you're not somebody that all that stuff really appealed to, if you're somebody that was resistant to the change, and you do miss Bill Snyder, and you don't like the way that I or those that think similarly to me have talked about Bill Snyder and what the program was like at the end of it, I get it. We're never going to see completely eye to eye on that sort of a thing. But what you can do now is get on board and embrace this and embrace where it's going, because I think it's headed to a very positive place. And again, we'll have the debate about the football aspect of it and what all of that means, but I would hope that Saturday was enough at least to show you that it doesn't mean the wheels will totally fall off, and it doesn't mean that K-State loses its identity. That game, they had 41 minutes of possession time. That was the K-State grinded out thing. Would anybody have watched that game and said, well, that's not really that same brand we felt like K-State football has had? Chris Kleiman just played a better brand of Bill Snyder football than Bill Snyder has played in a couple of years. That's what happened on Saturday. They went out and just dominated ball control. The defense was good and aggressive in spots and did enough, and they didn't commit penalties or have any kind of silly errors or not get play calls in and all of that stuff. I mean, I got tired of the storyline of, well, Bill Snyder teams are so disciplined and they don't hurt themselves and all of that, because, like last year, it wasn't true at all, but it just has stuck through the residual effects of that brand. Well, Chris Kleiman just threw out a brand that looked like that, but just way better. And you know what? It looked like the modernized version of Bill Snyder, which is what I said about this when we started really finding more out about Chris Kleiman and the hire in the first place, okay? So, again, you can still fight it. You can try and slow down change, and you can try and slow down progress. A wise man, Laszlo of the Church of Laszlo, 96.5 in Kansas City, I've always heard him say that the boulder of progress is always moving. It's always coming. You can try to stop it, but you're not going to stop it. You might slow it down for a little while, but you're not going to stop it. And that boulder is finally rolling through Manhattan, Kansas. You might as well get on board and embrace it, even if it means listening to some Meek Mill. And let me tell you, if you are a baby boomer out there, if you are somebody much older than me, you want some help on all of this, I was helping guys put together a Spotify playlist of the music that we were hearing in pregame because, damn it, I just love that. That made it so much more fun for me, and I'm 30. I'm 10 years older than these players, and you could see what it meant to them. And go check the Twitter timelines of some of the recruits that were there that they had in watching that game and how much fun they had experiencing all of that. That's what it means something to, and we're seeing how tangible that is. That team that played for Chris Kleiman was, they've added some pieces, sure, but that was for the most part the same team last year that went out against South Dakota, a team not ranked, by the way, in the FCS poll, and they were down by 12 in the fourth quarter. How much differently did they play with the style that Chris Kleiman coaches with? How much different did that look? I think all of that should be enough evidence to you that there are some good things happening here, and it's not just all going to go south and go crazy just because it's not Bill Snyder and it's not Van Halen and it's not this old school conservative mentality the way that it was before. So again, if you want some help, you want some music here, I'm going to leave you with Dreams and Nightmares by Meek Mill, a little piece of it, which I consider to be maybe the greatest hip-hop hype song of all time, which I'm sure is why it made this playlist. And maybe we can all together start to embrace this and start to move forward.
It was time to marry the game, and I said, yeah, I do. If you want it, you gotta see it with a clear eye view. Got shorty, she try and bless me like I said I chew, like a sneeze. Please for them trick and squeeze, I'm getting cream. Never let them get in between of what we started. Look, but I'm lying-hearted. They love me when I was stuck and they hated when I departed. I go and get it regardless. Draw it like I'm an artist. No crawling, went straight to walking with foreigns in my garages or foreign menage. Sucking and swallowing anything for $1. They tell me get 'em, I got 'em.